David Cohen waited for help at London's airport, unaware that the airport worker assisting him was Tom Hardy. His behavior toward him would provide the ugliest example of cross-cultural prejudice. The sprawling terminals of Heathrow Airport hummed with the constant energy of international travel. Millions of passengers pass through these corridors every year, each carrying their own stories, destinations, and unfortunately, their own prejudices. Among the sea of travelers and staff moving through Terminal 5, a figure in a bright orange safety vest pushed a luggage cart with practiced efficiency. Tom Hardy had spent weeks preparing for this phase of his social experiment. The transformation was complete: a high-visibility vest over a simple polo shirt, steel-toed boots, and a lanyard displaying the credentials of Michael Thompson, a baggage handler who had been working at Heathrow for 3 years. His usually groomed appearance had been replaced with the practical look of someone who spent their days loading heavy luggage and dealing with the endless demands of stressed travelers. The makeup artists had worked meticulously to alter his appearance. Temporary tattoos covered his recognizable ones, contact lenses changed his distinctive blue eyes to brown, and subtle prosthetics altered his facial structure just enough to make recognition unlikely. His signature beard had been trimmed and styled differently, and the deliberate slouch he'd practiced made him appear shorter and less commanding than his natural presence. This experiment was different from his previous undercover roles. At the airport, Hardy would encounter people from dozens of different cultures, each bringing their own attitudes about class, service, and human dignity. He was particularly interested in observing how travel stress affected people's behavior toward those they perceived as beneath their social status. The hidden cameras were state-of-the-art, built into his vest, and the equipment cart he pushed. The BBC documentary crew was positioned discreetly throughout the terminal, posing as travelers and maintenance staff. Unlike his previous experiments, this one required coordination with airport security and management, who were briefed on the project, but sworn to secrecy. David Cohen stood near the baggage claim area, checking his expensive Rolex with visible agitation. At 45, Cohen was a successful technology entrepreneur from Tel Aviv, who had built a thriving software company specializing in cybersecurity solutions. His tailored business suit and Italian leather briefcase spoke of success and sophistication, but his increasingly frustrated demeanor suggested that his travel plans were not proceeding smoothly. Cohen's morning had started badly in Tel Aviv. His usual driver had been delayed by traffic, causing him to arrive at Ben Gurion Airport later than planned. The flight to London had been turbulent and further delayed by weather conditions, and now he was facing a tight connection to New York where a critical business meeting awaited. His company was in the final stages of a merger worth over $100 million, and missing this meeting could jeopardize months of delicate negotiations. Hardy observed Cohen from across the baggage claim area, noting the classic signs of travel stress: rapid pacing, constant phone checking, and the increasingly sharp tone he used when speaking to airport staff. This was exactly the kind of situation that revealed people's true character when they felt pressure and believed no one important was watching. "Excuse me," Cohen called out sharply in accented English as Hardy passed nearby with his cart. "You work here, yes? I need help immediately." Hardy turned toward Cohen with the professional demeanor he had practiced for weeks. "Of course, sir. How can I assist you?" Cohen's eyes swept over Hardy's uniform dismissively, clearly cataloging him as manual labor rather than someone capable of solving complex problems. There was something in his gaze that went beyond simple categorization. It was the look of someone who had spent years believing that certain types of people existed solely to serve others. "My luggage is missing. Flight LY316 from Tel Aviv. I have a connection in 35 minutes and I cannot find my bags anywhere." Cohen's tone carried the impatience of someone accustomed to having problems solved immediately upon request. Hardy consulted the tablet he carried, pulling up the baggage tracking system. The device was authentic. He had spent days learning the actual systems used by airport staff to ensure his performance would be believable. "Let me check on that for you, sir. Can I have your baggage claim numbers?" Cohen thrust his boarding pass toward Hardy with visible impatience, the gesture dismissive and barely short of contemptuous. "Everything is there. Just find my bags quickly. I don't have time for incompetence." The casual insult stung, but Hardy maintained his composure while accessing the baggage system. This kind of immediate hostility toward service workers was something he had observed in all his experiments, but the international airport setting seemed to amplify people's worst impulses. "I can see your bags in the system, sir," Hardy said after a moment of searching. "They're currently being transferred to Terminal 3 for your connecting flight. The transfer usually takes about 15 minutes, so they should be available at your departure gate by the time you arrive." Cohen's expression darkened, his jaw tightening with frustration. Should be is not good enough. I need certainty. Do you understand what that means? Certainty? Hardy felt the familiar sting of condescension that he had experienced in every one of his undercover roles. The assumption that manual workers were inherently less intelligent, less capable of understanding complex concepts, was a constant theme in how people treated those they perceived as beneath them. "I understand your concern, sir," Hardy replied evenly. "Let me contact baggage services to confirm the exact location of your luggage and get you a more precise timeline." As Hardy made the necessary calls, he could hear Cohen on his own phone, speaking rapidly in Hebrew. Though Hardy didn't understand the language, the tone was clearly one of frustration and complaint. When Cohen finished his call, he turned back to Hardy with renewed irritation. "This is taking too long. In Israel, we handle these things efficiently. Here, everything is slow, bureaucratic. Do you even know what you're doing?" The comparison to Israeli efficiency, combined with the implication that Hardy was incompetent, revealed layers of cultural superiority that went beyond simple travel stress. This wasn't just about missing luggage, this was about fundamental assumptions of cultural and personal superiority that Cohen carried with him. "I'm doing everything possible to locate your luggage, sir," Hardy said, his professional mask beginning to feel strained. "The system shows it's in transit to your departure terminal. I've just spoken with the baggage team, and they confirm it's on its way." Cohen stepped closer, invading Hardy's personal space in a way that felt deliberately intimidating. His voice dropped, but his tone became more pointed, more threatening. "Listen to me carefully. I am not some tourist who accepts delays and excuses. I run a company worth $50 million. I employ over 200 people. When I tell you I need my luggage found, that is not a request, that is an instruction." Hardy felt the familiar pattern emerging, the immediate resort to wealth and status as justification for treating others poorly. Cohen's success in business was being weaponized to intimidate someone he perceived as powerless. "I respect that you're under pressure, sir," Hardy replied, maintaining his composure despite the growing urge to abandon his character. "But I'm following standard procedures to locate your baggage as quickly as possible." "Standard procedures," Cohen interrupted, his voice rising enough to draw attention from nearby passengers. "Standard procedures are why British efficiency is a joke worldwide. In my country, we solve problems instead of hiding behind procedures. We understand urgency. We understand that time is money." The generalized insult to British workers stung particularly deeply because Hardy knew it reflected genuine prejudices rather than just travel stress. Cohen wasn't just frustrated. He was expressing deeply held beliefs about national and cultural superiority. Hardy's radio crackled with an update from baggage services. "Sir, I have confirmation that your luggage has arrived at Terminal 3, Gate B7. That's where your departure gate is located. The bags are being unloaded now and should be available for pickup within the next 5 minutes." Instead of relief or gratitude, Cohen's expression remained skeptical. "You're certain of this? Because if you're wrong, if I miss my flight because of your mistake, there will be consequences. I know people in airport management. I can make sure incompetent employees face appropriate disciplinary action." The threat was unmistakable, and Hardy realized that Cohen was the type of person who used his perceived power to intimidate service workers into submission. The assumption that Hardy's job could be threatened by a single complaint revealed his willingness to destroy someone's livelihood over a travel inconvenience. "I understand the information is accurate, sir," Hardy said carefully, "but you'll need to get to Terminal 3 quickly to make your connection. The transit train runs every 3 minutes, and the journey takes about 8 minutes. Cohen gathered his carry-on bag and laptop case, then turned back to Hardy with an expression of pure contempt. "You know what your problem is? You people have no sense of urgency, no understanding that some passengers are more important than others. In the real world, priority matters. Some of us contribute more to society than others. The phrase, "you people," hung in the air like a slap. Hardy had heard variations of it in every one of his experiments. The casual dehumanization that allowed people to justify cruelty toward those they perceived as different or lesser. Several passengers nearby had stopped to stare, their expressions ranging from embarrassment to outright disapproval of Cohen's behavior. A young mother with children shook her head in disgust and moved away from the confrontation. Hardy watched Cohen begin to walk away, then made a decision that would change the entire dynamic of their interaction. The experiment had gathered enough data about Cohen's attitudes and behavior. Now it was time for the revelation that would force him to confront the consequences of his actions. "Actually, sir," Hardy called out, his voice carrying a subtle but unmistakable shift in authority, "I think there's something you should understand about priority." Cohen turned back, irritated by what he perceived as continued delay from someone he had already dismissed as irrelevant. "What now? I don't have time for more of your—" "About the real world," Hardy interrupted, his professional mask beginning to slip away, "and about understanding who's actually important." Something in Hardy's tone made Cohen pause. There was confidence there now, authority that didn't match his supposed position as a baggage handler. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. The slouched posture straightened, the deferential tone disappeared. And suddenly, the man in the orange vest seemed to command the space around him. Hardy reached into his vest pocket and withdrew his phone, not the basic device an airport worker might carry, but a cutting-edge smartphone that clearly cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Let me show you something about priority," Hardy said, his voice taking on the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being heard rather than dismissed. He pressed a number on his phone and activated the speaker. The voice that answered was crisp, professional, and carried the kind of influence that made Cohen's entrepreneurial success seem modest by comparison. "Tom, how's the airport experiment proceeding?" Cohen's face went pale as recognition began to dawn. The confident businessman who had spent 20 minutes asserting his superiority was beginning to understand that he had just humiliated someone far more successful and influential than himself. "It's been very educational, Marcus," Hardy replied, his voice now carrying its natural authority. "I've learned quite a lot about how successful business people treat workers when they think no one important is watching." Cohen opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The businessman who had spent the last 20 minutes lecturing about efficiency and importance was beginning to understand that he had just humiliated one of the world's most recognizable actors. "Excellent," the voice continued. "The BBC documentary team has captured everything. This will be powerful material for the segment on travel behavior and class dynamics." Hardy ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Cohen stood frozen, his entire worldview crashing down around him as he realized the magnitude of his error. "You see, Mr. Cohen," Hardy said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute authority, "I wanted to understand how people treat service workers when they're under stress. Your behavior has been quite educational." Cohen's mouth moved soundlessly as he tried to process the implications of what had just happened. His successful business, his cultural superiority, his threats and intimidation, all of it had just been exposed as the petty cruelty of someone punching down at people he thought couldn't fight back. "For the record," Hardy continued, removing his fake contact lenses to reveal his distinctive blue eyes, "I've been working at this airport for exactly 6 hours as part of a social experiment. In my actual career, I've probably earned more in a single film than your company is worth. But that's not really the point, is it?" Cohen found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. I didn't know. If I had known who you were—" "That's exactly the problem," Hardy interrupted, his voice sharp with controlled anger. "You didn't know, and you didn't care to know. You made assumptions based on a uniform, and treated another human being like they were beneath your consideration." Hardy gestured toward the busy terminal around them. "Look around, Mr. Cohen. Every person wearing a uniform, every cleaner, every baggage handler, every security guard, they're all human beings with their own stories, their own struggles, their own dignity. They don't deserve to be treated as inferior just because they wear different clothes or do different jobs." Cohen's face was now completely drained of color, I apologize. I was stressed about my flight, and stress doesn't excuse cruelty, Hardy said firmly. Success doesn't justify arrogance, and your nationality or mine doesn't make either of us superior to anyone else. Hardy began walking away, then paused and looked back. Your luggage is at gate B7, by the way. You should still be able to make your flight if you hurry. And Mr. Cohen, the next time you travel, remember that the people helping you are human beings who deserve respect, regardless of who you think you are. As Hardy disappeared into the crowd of travelers, Cohen stood alone in the baggage claim area, finally understanding that his assumptions about importance and priority had just been shattered by someone who actually understood what those concepts meant. The experiment had revealed exactly what Hardy had suspected, that stress, perceived power, and cultural prejudices combined to create a toxic environment where basic human dignity was routinely discarded. But more importantly, it had shown that accountability could come from unexpected places, and that treating people with respect wasn't just morally right, it was practically wise. Cohen eventually made his flight, but the lesson learned in those few minutes at Heathrow would stay with him far longer than any business meeting. Before you finish, don't forget to write your thoughts. Don't forget to follow us and like the video for the continuation of Unknown Stories with Tom Hardy. We will bring you the backstages of the movies and the stories we have compiled from Tom Hardy's daily life. Thank you in advance for your support and motivation.